Thank you. Thank you. You know, I was just, during the break, I just realized this must have been a church because there's the choir loft up there. I know I look old. That's probably because 40 years ago, I turned 40. And a couple of years ago, I started a 20-year plan. But why am I saying this? The reason I'm telling you this is that when I was in midlife, when I was 50, I went back to university. I decided to be change my career. And for the next 25 years, I worked in a job that was more fun than anything I'd ever done before. It was, as a matter of fact, it was so much fun that I'd go to work at 5, at 3, 2 in the morning even, and my supervisor was there before me. The reason I'm telling you this is that each of you has the possibility to do what you want. Just like Ray was saying this morning, you have a gift. Each of you has a gift that only you in this whole universe can give. And it's our job, I think, in our life to find what that gift is and to give it with our whole being. Now we have a chance to create, if you want to call it, positively or negatively. How do you tell the difference? By the results. If what you're doing follows the ancient pattern of loving kindness and love and generosity and peace and goodwill, justice, then you know we're on the right track. If what we're doing creates anger, fear, doubt, lust, jealousy, then we're on the wrong track. One of the private tests is that we have to be able to look into a mirror and be comfortable with what we see. The Muslims are called to prayer 5 days a week, 5 times a day. I would suggest that our call is a fire siren, or police, or ambulance. Send a thought to those people, whatever's happening for that. Most of the things we do are little things. Picking up a piece of trash and putting it in the garbage can. Rejoicing with a happy child. Creating a smile on somebody's face where there was been a frown before. Helping a visitor who's lost. But every once in a while, there are big things. When I was first I wanted to mention the fact that we are co-creating, we are co-inspiring for the future. But if we look after today and today and today, the future will look after itself. Like a little girl said, yesterday is gone, tomorrow hasn't come yet. Today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. So, and the co part means that we're all working together. There's a Buddhist concept that none of us is going anywhere till every blade of grass can come to. I want to give you an example of how we're one, not just what we see or hear. Many years ago, I was visiting my mother in the hospital, and I would walk in every day to see her, and something was nagging at me, and I stopped and thought, what is going on? And I realized I was going past the nursery, and there was a single newborn in this nursery crying and crying and crying. And I thought to myself, in this little town of 2,000, is there anybody that realizes that its soul has come back and it's crammed in this little tiny body and it's confused and lost and doesn't know what to do and lonely? Massage has been a big part of my life. I don't know how to describe it, whether it's energy or love or what, but it wells up from inside and comes out through my hands. And so I went up to the window, this wire mesh window, and let this flow through to this little child for about a minute. All of a sudden, this little baby opened its eyes, It looked me full in the face and held my gaze for about 30 seconds, went to sleep, and never cried again. We are one. People who see auras say they're about this far. So your auras are all interconnected. We're all interconnected. Back when I was saying that there are small things that we can do, but once in a while there's big things. When I was a faculty member in a research department, one of my tasks was to test hundreds of patients that had been referred to us by physicians outside. This test, we called a functional capacity test. Most of the injuries had been back pain, back problems or injuries. The test was first a history, then an activity history, then a battery of questionnaires, then in the lab, a regional examination, then a bunch of machines, computer monitored machines that tested whether a person could move and how they could do against the resistance. Into my office one day came this beautiful little family, a husband and wife, 3 beautiful little children. The woman had been in a car accident 6 years earlier when the car in which she was riding had been rear-ended. Since that time, she had unremitting back pain. She had been 5 months pregnant at the time when the accident happened, so they didn't x-ray her. This little 6-year-old girl, the lovely little girl, was the one that was inside when the accident happened. So I finished the test. I give them my report of findings, tell them what I'm going to write in my report after they leave to send to the referring doctor. I didn't tell you that she spoke only Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, so her husband translated through this whole thing. At the end of a test, I always say, are there any questions? They talked for a couple of minutes. Then he turned to me. To my dying day, I'll never forget the first 6 words of her question. Now that you've given me hope, am I going to have back pain all my life? I would like to share with you some what I call tools for co-creating, for co-inspiring. The word inspire in this context really means to breathe new life into. So that's what our task, our daily task is to do, one day at a time. The first is, it has been called reframing. If you run across a new situation, you look at it and you think, what is this? It's a puzzle. Say, back off and look at it. Maybe there's a new way to look at it. My wife and I have 2 lovely adult sons. When the youngest one was about 5, he had so many friends, he was very often late for dinner. And one time he came down late again. My frustrated wife gave him a round verbal thrashing for being late, during which he looked at her intently. When she stopped for a breath, he said, "You're an exciting woman when you're mad." There's a story that Abraham had a stranger come to his tent, and he always took a stranger in as a guest. But that night Abraham told him to leave. That night Abraham had a dream. In the dream the Lord said, "Abraham, I've sent you a man today and you kicked him out. Why did you do that?" "But Lord, Moses told us we need to do our evening devotions. And he wouldn't do it, so I kicked him out." "Abraham, I've been looking after that silly man, putting up with that silly man for 70 years. Couldn't you put up with him for one night?" There's another tool. Is dreams. There's no one of us that doesn't dream. And it's important to learn how to interpret and remember and interpret our dreams. In my first near-death experience when I was an infant, before I had words, I had a high fever and I floated up into the place where my dreams came from. And as I became an adult, eventually I learned to record my dreams. So that the tool that I want to talk about is a journal. Keeping track of your outer and your inner life, our cell phone, internet, media-oriented life, entices us away from knowing who we are inside. There's a Jewish saying that an uninterpreted dream is an unopened letter from God. in a journal, not a diary, but a journal. You keep track of your inner life and compare your outer life with it. Dreams talk in symbolic picture language primarily. Not always, but most of the time. And most of our dreams are about ourselves. And most of your own interpretation of a dream is by your own way, not by reading somebody else's books, because their images are different. I had a repetitive dream, and this is the case where one's unconscious is trying to get across a really important message of going to the bathroom in public in this case. Really unsatisfactory thing. It got worse. I'm up on a pole scraping stuff off now. What am I doing? And because of my journal, I realized that I had this every time I lost my temper. The dream was telling me very clearly, you were defiling yourself by losing your temper. Once I changed my pattern, I never had that dream again. There's another tool, is our body. We know we have a body. We think maybe we have a soul. That's backwards. We are souls who live in bodies. They are our dwellings, like our houses, our cars, and we can choose what we do with them. It's important to keep your body healthy. Michael Pollan, Pollan, has written a simple rule of remaining healthy. Eat food, not much, mostly plants. The biggest animals on earth are made out of leaves, and so are Canada geese, if you watch what they do. He defines food as something your great-great-grandmother would recognize as food, something that doesn't have any more than 5 ingredients, and none of them have unpronounceable names, which takes you out of pretty near everywhere except the produce department. As a organic farmer in Indianapolis at a conference, I heard say, most of the rest of the stuff in the store doesn't even have enough life in it to rot. About 14 years ago, I can vouch for this, because about 14 years ago, almost 14 years ago, I did a 35-day supervised bed rest water fast. I was never hungry, which meant that the fast was incomplete, after which I learned to eat primarily raw veggies and fruit. Sometimes I eat meat on social occasions. But, however, I've been doing that ever since, and my body's totally different. The reason I did this, before that I'd had a small stroke. I had a whole bunch of series of cardiovascular problems which foreshadowed serious problems. I really feel that if I hadn't done that, I would have been seriously injured, probably dead by now. As I think it was one of the bold people said, most of my friends are dead at the present time, so you need to make new friends. One of the important things about eating is to distinguish between hunger and appetite. My mother wrote some things that I said in my baby book, and one of the things I said apparently was, my mouth hurts for ice cream. That's obviously appetite. The last thing I'd like to leave with you is simply joy. I came out of a restaurant one time in a park, and there was a little boy looking intently at something, and I looked over his shoulder, and there was a chipmunk. The chipmunk was standing on its hind legs, and it found one of those little round cups that butter comes in a restaurant, and it was turning this around with his eyes shut. It was enjoying this much. It was enjoying it so much that it fell over backwards and ran away. And there was a peal of laughter from this little boy. I wish I'd had a tape recorder to tape it. It would sound like fairy bells ringing. It was as if he was saying, oh, chipmunk people can make mistakes too, and it's all right. I'd like to leave you with the last, one of my favorite quotations from the Catholic scientist, priest, Pierre Terre de Chardin. Joy is the most infallible sign of the presence of God. Thank you for listening. Thank you.